Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town. Oh, the butcher and the baker and the people on the streets, where do they go? To meet the Mets! Oh, they're hollering and cheering and they're jumping in their seats. Where do they go? To meet the Mets! All the fans are true to the orange and blue, so hurry up and come on down, 'cause we got ourselves a ball club, the Mets of New York town. Give 'em a yell, give 'em a hand, and let 'em know you're rooting in the stand.
Rob on the mic, spitting truth from the heights. Queens unite under stadium lights. Bright nights, 7 train rides. Dreams born in the real hum. Brooklyn to Queens, yeah, we all about that outcome. This our time, this our cheer. Mets talk loud, bring the hype, make it clear. From the boroughs to the field, this our year. Queens in the house, let the world hear. From Flushing Meadows, echoes bounce off the bat. Rob calls, take the mic, snaps like a thunderclap. Home runs over bridges, no gaps in the story. Mets rise, reclaiming the glory. 7 the city, blue and orange army swarm. Summer vibe electric, love in every form. From Biggie's blocks to Flushing's heartbeat, our anthem loud, no retreat. This our time, this our cheer. Mets talk loud, bring the hype, make it clear. From the boroughs to the field, this our year. Queens in the house, let the world hear. The apple pops in the outfield, city of dreams. Rob's voice over static, Mets on every stream. White lines mapped out the future, vividly. From Shade to City, the journey's never gimmicky.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another Mets Trade Deadline show right here on the channel and on X on this very, very good Sunday afternoon here, as the Mets are looking to sweep the San Francisco Giants in the Bay Area at Oracle Park, as they do have Kodai Senga on the mound to try to get that sweep. But we got so much to talk about over the next 5 days, including today, for the MLB Trade Deadline. 6 p.m. on that Thursday is the cutoff time to make your team better. And there's been a lot of reports. I just posted a video about a half hour ago. There is another one coming at 3 o'clock. It's going to cover all the bases of what we've been hearing over the last 24 hours. And specifically now, that video that I just put up about the Marlins and Mets impossible trade talks, it's all about what you might think about. It's about Sandy Alcantara. It's about Edward Cabrera. Is that a possibility? Either one of those guys could be heading to the Mets in a couple of days, according to multiple reports. I go into depth a little bit more in that video, so if you want to watch it after this stream is over, that is all up to you. But it's going to be very, 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 very important over the next couple of days to keep your notifications on for not just my videos and live streams, but for Chris's as well, and of course Zach as well. It's going to be a ton of content, a ton of live streams. Any breaking news, you know where I'll be. I'll be right here on the channel, going live for any Mets breaking news. And look, guys, this is the opportunity for David Stearns to fall back into favor of a lot of Mets fans, and that included myself. I am a little worried about David Stearns in the overall spectrum of, is he going to do what is deemed necessary to improve this team? Not make it a little better, improve this team big time. Gregory Soto was a good start. You needed another high leverage arm, and it happened to be a lefty. Now you got 2 lefty arms. You got high leverage reliever in your bullpen now that is probably going to piggyback and be the bridge to Edwin Diaz. That is important. You got Raley. You saw what Reed Garrett did yesterday. You saw what Stanek did yesterday. That is a pretty good 5 guys right there. I still believe you need at least one more mid to high range leverage arm in the bullpen, and then someone who can probably give you innings like a long man that can give you multiple innings on any given day, and that's probably what they're probably looking for. I do expect 2 more bullpen pieces to come available. To come to the Mets. Again, the Mets are looking, and David Stearns has told you this, guys. I talked about this in my video that has been posted at 12 o'clock. David Stearns is not making a deal for a rotation arm or a bat if he doesn't deem it much better than what they currently have. Sandy Alcantara, Edward Cabrera, let's just say those are the 2 guys that are the most obvious choices for the Mets in trade talks from the Marlins. Obviously, I think more people will probably be leaning Sandy Alcantara over Edward Cabrera, even though Edward Cabrera does have a lot of electric stuff. He has injury concerns. He has control concerns. We know what Sandy Alcantara could do. Hasn't had a great season, but is coming back from Tommy John. You also got him you got him under control for a couple more years. So that is something that is also David Stearns really, really likes. He is not old. He is younger than most guys that would probably be on the market next year if you're going to try to sign him. So Alcantara makes sense. Edward Cabrera makes sense. Edward Cabrera has a little bit more control than Sandy Alcantara, but a lot of people seen what Alcantara can do, right? When he's at the top of his game, he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. When Edward Cabrera is at the top of his game, which I still don't believe we've seen it yet, there is concern there. Now, I don't think getting one of these guys, regardless of which one it is, I don't think Edward Cabrera is a bad move. I think if the Mets can fix him and figure out what's his issue in the pitching lab, you might get a very, very interesting pitcher that could be a top 3 pitcher in the rotation for not just this year, but for years to come. Now, on the other hand, because he has a little bit more control than Sandy Alcantara and he's a couple of years younger, he's going to cost more because of the control, because of the age, because he's not making any real money. He's going to cost you more than Sandy Alcantara, in my opinion. Sandy Alcantara, you got to take on that contract. That's number one. That is where the Mets are ahead of this in this trade talks. They're going to take the money. They're taking that payroll, that salary off of the Marlins payroll. That is number one. Number two, I don't think he's going to cost more than Edward Cabrera. But even though Alcantara overall is the better pitcher, at least career-wise, because of the less years, the money that's involved, it's a strong possibility that Sandy Alcantara is more likely to be a Met over Edward Cabrera, in my opinion, because it's going to cost a little bit less. Again, it's going to be a pretty good package going back to the Marlins. You know, we can discuss it if you want. I went into a little bit of detail in regards to that video because I just saw the reports and I just made the video rather quickly. So maybe I'll make another video later, probably tomorrow, in regards to what type of trade proposal you could be looking at for Alcantara or Edward Cabrera. But just service time alone and how much time you have, how much control you have over each pitcher is why you're probably going to pay a little bit more. And because Edward Cabrera has a lot of upside, we will have to see. So I do think it's Sandy Alcantara is the guy that Stearns is going after because, again, he is a top of the rotation guy. You know, we do have a lot of concerns in our rotation. Let's not hide from it, okay? Kodai Senga, who is pitching today, is not trustworthy. If you believe he's trustworthy, then I can sell you anything in this world that is meaningless, and you would buy it. He is not trustworthy at all. At all. I know I got the topics all over the place, but I wanted to start with that because the reports just came out about 2 hours ago in regards to Sandy Alcantara or the Marlins and the Mets talking. So that's why I wanted to bring it up right away. 6 ERA is not top of the line starter. That's fine. What starter do you want? You're probably going to talk about Zach Gallen. He's not that much better. Right? So again, this is not about what he's doing now. And I always believe, look, we got Static last year who had a 5 ERA. He was not good. He couldn't throw strikes. We got him. He started to throw strikes. He started to be better. He dropped his ERA all the way down to under 3 when he was a Met. So don't look at just the stats that he's playing for that team. Just don't do that. He is coming back from Tommy John, so it takes time. It really does take time. You know, people are talking about Merrill Kelly. Yeah, Merrill Kelly, multiple guys, right? Keller having better seasons than all the guys we just mentioned. But they're going to cost you. It's just a fact because they're pitching better. Like, yeah, that's fine. Merrill Kelly has been better. But let me ask you something. Do you trust Merrill Kelly over Sandy Alcantara in a big game? Let's be honest. Right? Merrill Kelly, I understand, right? He is, he's a rental. So that's something that you have to look at as well. Again, I don't think David Stearns is getting a pitcher that is a rental, that is top 3 starter. And make no mistake about it, just because Alcantara hasn't been good this year does not mean the Mets can't get him and he'll be better. We've seen this all the time as guys that don't have good stats end up on a contending team and pitch better or play better. Well, why? Yeah, but you can stack the bullpen all you want, but when you don't have starting pitching that gives you enough innings and gives you enough depth, especially innings, your bullpen is basically useless if you're going to continue to use 4, 5 to 6 guys every single night. That's the problem. Like, you can stack the bullpen all you want. Gotta stack the bullpen all you want. That's fine. But we're not talking about the playoffs just yet. You got to get your starters ready for the playoffs. You can't have guys like Sean Manaea, Kodai Senga, Clay Holmes, David Peterson basically gasping for air playoff time because it burned us last year. We used them so much. The starting pitching, because we were fighting for a playoff spot and trying to get back into a playoff spot the entire year last year, you had to go well above the innings you were comfortable with all your starting pitchers. And ultimately, it got guys gassed, and it cost us in the postseason, where the bullpen, who was basically very solid for the Mets, by the way, in the postseason, had no hope because you were constantly using these guys. Same thing with the regular season. You still got 2 months of baseball. You can't have guys going 5 innings or less on a consistent basis. You are going to destroy your bullpen the time the playoffs even come. That's the biggest problem. That's the biggest problem. So we can continue to worry about, and again, I don't care about these prospects. I truly don't give a damn. You give me a name, I have them on the market. And I'm not trading a very special prospect that it might be untouchable for absolute nothing. If it's somebody that's a big name, a big player that can really help this team, I'm doing it. And here's the other thing, guys. If Sandy Alcantara does become a New York Met, let's just say, right? The second year after Tommy John is usually more like the player that we've seen of past. Just look at Zach Wheeler. Just look at baseball in general with these pitchers. It's usually the second year is where they take that next big jump. Now, I'm not saying Alcantara can't help us right now. I think he can. But just look at the whole aspect of your rotation. We could talk about Tong, McLean, Sproat all we want. There's no guarantee with those guys. I don't give a damn what they do in the minors. I just don't. I don't care. Don't give me stats in the minors, and then I'll give you a lot of guys like Lessons Millage. I'll give you Fernando Martinez. I will give you Brett Beatty. I will give you Mark Vientos. I will give you Ronnie Mauricio. I'll give you Luis Angel Acuna. Guys who have excellent, really good numbers in the minors, and they have done very little. Brett Beatty has done something. Vientos did it last year, but not doing it now. You can't be in win now mode and wait for these guys to perform. You just can't do that. It's a dangerous game to play because after August 1st, on August 1st, you are stuck with the players you have. And if you don't get a bat, and I'm not saying the bat's going to make the difference, but it could. And not making that move is more of a detriment of being scared to make the move. Because if Vientos doesn't hit, if Beatty turns back to a pumpkin, if Mauricio and Acuna are doing the exact same thing they're doing now, that is not enough. And oh, by the way, you have Tyron Taylor in center field. That is not enough. It's just a fact. Alex, you can say all you want. I'm not the GM. But here's the problem. We've all been Met fans. I'm looking at all those World Series banners. There isn't many. And we're almost on year 40 of winning the World Series. That's how long it's been. So don't give me, oh, well, these prospects. What about 2027? What about 2026? By the way, there'll probably be no baseball in 2027 the way the CBA is going to look. So I'm not saying to trade 9 out of your top 10 prospects. By no means I'm saying that. But you can't talk about win now. You can't be a top 5 team in baseball and tell me that you're not going to go for it. Because if you end up losing in the NLCS again, or even if you get to the World Series and lose, it's a failure. If you don't believe it's a failure, then you don't really want to win. And that's a fact. I'm sorry. Right? The Vogelback rough trade made no sense. It wasn't good enough. Last year, getting Paul Blackburn wasn't good enough. We needed another rotation arm. You don't get Paul Blackburn, who's basically a ghost in the playoffs because you can't trust him. So how did that help this team? Stanek and Phil Maton helped this team. Not in the playoffs for Maton, but in the regular season when we got him, he was our better reliever over than Stanek, and then Stanek was the better reliever in the playoffs. Well, Mike, see, it is a failure. You did not win. I don't. What do you want another pennant banner and that's it? It's like going to the Super Bowl and losing it. Football players talk about this all the time. An NFC, AFC championship ring is pointless if you don't have a Super Bowl ring. Like, nobody's saying a big trade for a bat or an arm is going to make the difference. But go back the last 5 years and tell me a team that didn't make the big moves at the deadline, where did they end up? Where did they end up? Look at the World Series teams over the last couple of seasons, the teams that won. The Dodgers last year made the big moves. Right? You want to go back to the Rangers, made the big moves. You want to keep on going back and back and back. The Braves. Right? It wasn't the big moves, but it was the necessary moves. They needed an entire outfield. And yet one of those guys ended up being World Series MVP. Well, one, I'm not worrying about getting another bullpen arm. I'm not, because there's so many out there. I'm not concerned about that. You know what I'm concerned about? The rotation, the pitchers that are available for rotation, and a bat, because there's not that many of them out there. And oh, by the way, guys, would it be okay with you if Sandy Alcantara goes to the Phillies, or Sandy Alcantara goes to the Cubs or the Dodgers? How would you feel about that? Because the Mets didn't want to give up a prospect. That's stupid. Because now the team you're competing for this National League is now going to be pitching against you. That's what you want? It's not just about getting your team better. It's also avoiding for the other team that you're competing against, not getting them. That's the other problem. Like we just act like, oh, if the Mets don't get him, nobody will. That's a stupid mentality to have. That is a loser mentality. Yeah, Juan, that's wrong. How can you say that when he's never had the money he had when he ran the Brewers? And oh, by the way, didn't he trade for Christian Yelich? That's not a big trade. That was a big deal, right? He didn't have the means of trading prospects and taking on a ton of money with Milwaukee. That's not the way they run their team there. They don't have the money. They have to hold on to as many prospects as possible. That's the problem. So again, I'm not telling you that I trust Stearns to do this. I think he is going to shy away, but I give him a ton of credit if he actually, gets a little uncomfortable and makes these trades. You got to get uncomfortable at trade deadlines if you want to win. Right? Everybody's like, don't trade Jet Williams. Well, why not? Why not? What if Cedric Mullins and Luis Robert, one of those guys, are the difference? And I'm not saying they will be, but what if they are, right? Luis Robert and Cedric Mullins are better offensively than Tyrone Taylor. That's just a fact. Taylor wished he had a year like any of those two guys. Again, I'm not saying those are the difference. But again, August 1st, when you look at the roster, is what you're going to get, unless you use internal options. Okay, DJ Dirty, great. Pete Crow Armstrong. If you're going to worry about Pete Crow Armstrong, then guess what? You're never going to win. You're never going to make a trade. It's stupid to worry about that. Again, when you make that PCA for Baez trade, your team wasn't good enough that year. That's why it was a stupid trade. If Javi Baez was the missing piece for the New York Mets in that season, it made sense. You know why? Because if you needed a bat in the lineup, and that was the missing piece, I can understand you doing that. Do we all forget Gleyber Torres for Aroldis Chapman? How did that work out for the Cubs? Last time I checked, Gleyber Torres is not on the Yankees anymore. Gleyber Torres didn't get Yankees a World Series championship. Got the Cubs a World Series championship. Right? You can't be afraid to make that trade because of years past. And thank you, Dakota. For every PCA, there's a Lessons Millage. There's a Fernando Martinez. There's Generation K. Right? There's failed prospect after failed prospect. I'm sorry. Javier Baez wasn't the missing piece for the New York Mets. They needed rotation. They needed bullpen. They probably needed another bat other than Javi Baez. There was so much needed where this team wasn't good enough at that year. That is different right now. You are a top 5 team in baseball. You're 17 games over 500. You're leading the NL East. You are a top 5 team in baseball. Some can argue a top 3 team in baseball. You don't mess around and half-ass a deadline because you're going to half-ass your potential of winning. ACJ, and listen, I'm okay with you saying don't trade for Roberts. He's trash. That's fine. I don't have a problem with you having an opinion like that. Right? I personally would rather have Cedric Mullins. I think there's more upside. I like the fact that, now, again, the Luis Robert thing, what I think Stearns might be looking at with Robert is similar to what he's seen from guys like Brett Beatty. And not like talent-wise or, service time or, control or anything like that. Just the fact that they like his potential of power in our lineup and speed, because he has the speed as well. Now, I think Cedric Mullins, I don't think is a better power hitter than Luis Robert, but he's great defensively. He's got speed. And I think putting Cedric Mullins in a better lineup could be more dangerous. You can easily bat him ninth and be a secondary leadoff hitter. So that's the other thing. And again, I know people, Dirty Coach, I understand. Merrill Kelly, he's a rental. Again, here's the thing, guys. The rental aspect is a big reason and a big key and make it noteworthy about getting rentals. Stearns is not going to do that because look, Merrill Kelly, there's not a lot of starting pitchers out there that are worth getting, right? There's maybe 5 guys, maybe, that are top of the market that can be traded. You don't think Merrill Kelly's going to warrant a good package going back? He's a solid pitcher. If people are talking about, well, he's been better than Alcantara and Cabrera this year, or even Gallen, well, what do you think? He's not going to cost anything? No, DJ, all the love, man. No worries. No toxic here. It's your opinion. I don't hate on opinions, right? Yeah, Rock, but here's the thing. Merrill Kelly's 36, 37 years old. You really think David Stearns is going to give him a contract? You're out of your mind. He don't even want to give a 30-year-old a multi-year deal. Merrill Kelly's probably going to get a 2 or 3 year deal at 36, 37 years old because of the year he's having. I could see the Mets going after Mitch Keller because he has control and he's been very good. That's what we're looking at here. You got to also look at the rental situation as well. I think, and this is why Robert is probably more likely than Mullins, because of the fact that Mullins is a free agent. He's a rental. And again, there's not many bats out there. There's Eugenio Suarez, Luis Robert, and Cedric Mullins that we know of. If Jaron Duran's gonna be an option, or other guys, still the market is still developing with that. But right now, those are the three bats that are highly coveted right now. Suarez rental, Mullins rental. Robert has a club option, which also could be a rental if the Mets don't take on that club option, which they don't have to until year end. So, well, DJ, I mean, I'd love to do that, but that doesn't mean the Pirates will do it, right? So, I think let's see, Mets need to get Mullins from the Orioles to the Mets. Let's see, Alcantara will be a bust if he comes here. No, we don't know that. How do we know that? I can tell you every name that you can bring up that they can be a bust if he comes here, right? You want to bring Gallen here? He could be a bust. What about Keller? Could be a bust, right? Kelly could be a bust. And Daniel, I agree with you. If the prospects are, and again, Stearns has been very hesitant, right? In the month of June, we barely had starting pitchers going in games for that basically entire month of June. Yet they were still hesitant to bring up any of the three top pitching prospects for 2 or 3 starts, right? Which tells me two things. One, David Stearns might not think they're ready, even though a lot of people believe at least McLean is, and maybe even Tong, and some even say Sproat. Or David Stearns doesn't believe in them this year as much as we all thought. Because I'm gonna tell you this right now. If we're talking about the names we're talking about, get uncomfortable, right? You know, get a pillow on your seat, sit down. You got to be uncomfortable. There is not a trade deadline worth doing if you're not going to be a little uncomfortable if you're a buyer, right? I always go back to Yoenis Cespedes, and I kept tweets from that many years ago. I brought it up, I think, about 2 weeks ago on a show with myself, Chris, and Zach. There was 3 of them. I remember 2 of them off the top of my head. I'm not going to go searching while I'm talking to you guys. Right? Here we go. The one guy said, and Zach and Chris can confirm this because I brought it up. One guy says, how can we trade our top pitching prospect for a guy who is not an on-base guy and a high strikeout guy? Because Alderson was all about on base and, putting the bat on the ball. Yet they got Yoenis Cespedes for Michael Fulmer, who was our top overall prospect. Right? There was people talking about that. Finally, the Mets got the big bat they needed desperately in their lineup. And oh, by the way, this team, this 2025 New York Mets team, is lifetimes better than that 2015 team. Yet it took one move to change everything on that Mets roster. It made everybody better. And I don't think, and I think if you put Mullins, Robert, any of those 2 guys in a lineup with Alonso, Soto, Nimmo, Alvarez, Lindor, I think that's going to help them guys. I really do, right? We got leaders on this team. Last time I checked, the Orioles don't have leaders on their team, right? And the White Sox definitely don't. It's the inmates are running the asylum there. If you get a guy like Luis Robert and people are worried about attitude or, not hustling, he's going to get checked very quickly by a lot of guys on that team. So I'm not worried about them being, lackadaisical or being lazy. That's not going to happen on this team. Same thing with Cedric Mullins. I think Cedric Mullins, he's not a lazy player. He's a hustler. You see that catch he made the other day? He'll be fine in center field. And I do think his bat's going to play better than Tyron Taylor. And a lot of people are like, well, I don't want Cedric Mullins because it's another lefty in the lineup. Yet, me, Chris, and Zach talk about a lot about matchups. Our left-handed bats have been better against left-handed pitching than our right-handed bats. I'm not worried about matchup. Give me good players over matchups any day of the week. right? Did you see what the Yankees just did? They got Ryan McMahon, and they saw how terrible he was against a lefty. Oh boy, let's get a utility guy, Ahmed Rosario, old Met. Right? How did that Francisco Lindor trade work out, huh? Right? I know a lot of people like, how can you trade all your shortstops on your roster for Lindor? Even when you sign Lindor. Now, Jimenez became a good player. Ahmed Rosario has been a borderline major leaguer, basically a utility man. Imagine if we didn't make that deal. There's a lot of things here. You can give me, look at PCA. Well, I can tell you, look at Lindor. Right? Those things matter. So it is amazing that people want to win, but they want to win by getting everything they want. Like, well, I don't want to trade this guy, that guy, this guy. And then, but you want the guy, one of the top guys on the market. Well, that's not going to happen. Like, we have to understand that, right? To get, you got to give. You got to get uncomfortable. And again, I still believe that you can get rid of 3 or 4 of your top 10 prospects and still be very much okay in your farm system. And by the way, a couple of those prospects are on your major league roster. Like, I think Acuna is gone from this team. I think he's going to be in a deal. Possibility he might be in a deal with Sandy Alcantara. You might see him on the Marlins along with probably another prospect. Because I'm going to tell you this right now. Zach Gallen is not happening for the New York Mets. He's a free agent after this year. Not happening. Again, people talking about Merrill Kelly. Rental. Again, 36, 37 years old. That's not something you're going to pay for. Stearns is not doing that. So look at controllable, semi-young pitchers that could be a part of this team next year and years to come. That's the guys you're looking at. Joel, I agree. Robert has been good for 2 years. I agree with you. But there's a reason why teams are going after him. They believe in change of scenery. They believe that a change of scenery and a better team. Again, the White Sox have been one of the worst teams in baseball history the last couple of seasons. I don't care what anybody says. Would you want to go to the ballpark if you play for the Chicago White Sox or the Colorado Rockies? Like, seriously. I know you're getting paid millions of dollars. I know you're playing a game that you love as a kid. But that shit gets demoralizing. Going to the ballpark every day, having no chance of winning, that sucks. Don't tell me that doesn't change the mentality of a player. Now, it annoys me that players think like that, but they do. It's just a fact. Did you hear the interview from Ryan McMahon yesterday with Susan Wallman? When Susan Wallman was very blunt. She goes, I know you were trying in Colorado, but it must be a very big difference coming to the Yankees that are in playoff contention than playing for the Rockies that really have nothing to play for. And McMahon was like, yeah, that's true. Like, I try my best. I do what I can. But ultimately, I know that this team's not going to go anywhere. Like, he said that. It's not a direct quote, but he basically said that. Like, that's why you have to think, right? Tommy Edman, for example, that the Dodgers got last year, Met killer in the playoffs. He was the excellent in the postseason. Did anybody talk about Tommy Edman other than, when we heard him traded to the Dodgers? He wasn't a big name. Wasn't having a great season with the Cardinals. And look what he did. Like, that could be Robert. That can be Mullins. Not saying that it will be the case, but I'm sorry, guys. These guys are just as good, if not better, than Tyrone Taylor defensively. They're on the same defensive level. They're right there with each other. There is no mistaking that Robert and Mullins are better offensive players than Tyrone Taylor. Because I'm going to do this again. If Tyrone Taylor is playing center field and starting for center field every day, starting on August 1st, I don't want lip from anybody because you wanted it this way. You didn't want another bat because most likely the easiest obtainable bat is center field. Unless you're going to go get Eugenio Suarez by trading Vientos in a trade, maybe he might go to the Marlins. Maybe Vientos goes to the Marlins with another top prospect for Alcantara. You can have second base available for a Brett Beatty. You can DH Ronnie Mauricio. So that can, unless you're going to go and get Eugenio Suarez in that aspect, where if you trade Vientos, put Beatty at second, Mauricio your DH, fine. But I don't see that happening. So the obtainable bat, the more likely bat, is one of the two center fielders on the market. I'd be shocked if one of them are not Mets. I can't see Jeff McNeil playing center field every day. I just can't. That does not excite me. I said this on one of my shows. Jeff McNeil has been pretty better than expected in center field when he's played there. But I always had this little knot in my stomach thinking that Jeff McNeil is going to make a massive mistake in center field in a big game. That scares the hell out of me. Well, Barry, I agree with you. Mauricio doesn't produce runs. I agree. That's why I wouldn't make these guys untouchable. Mauricio and Acuna, what have they done for the New York Mets? Nothing. Vientos, last year. If you care about last year, great. I don't. It's done. It's over. You can't live on history. The only history I worry about is what banner we're putting up there for 2025. Is it playoff banner, postseason banner, or is it NLCS pennant banner? Is it World Series banner? That's what I care about. So I agree. Joel, he might get hurt, but even if McNeil stays healthy, I don't trust him. So, and again, I've said this for a while. If August 1st comes and you have Acuna, Mauricio, Beatty, and Vientos on this roster, number one, it's a failed trade deadline for the New York Mets. That roster is not sustainable. That means you didn't get better in center field. You didn't get the better bat. And what we've been dealing with for 105 games this year is nobody taking the third base job at all. Beatty has been playing second, playing third, so technically he doesn't really have a position. But I assume after this deadline, Beatty's going to be planted somewhere, and I believe that it's going to be third base. And McNeil's going to be our second baseman. Why? You got to get a center fielder. That is your best possibility of your best lineup. That's the way I feel. Because even if you get a Mullins, who some people might not want, if you get Robert, if some people might not want, they're at the level or close to Tyrone Taylor defensively. So you're not losing anything there, but you might gain offense. That's the problem with this team. Offense that we complain about all the time, right? Everybody bitched at me that I talked about pitching, and I don't trust them. Now everybody doesn't care about the lineup and the lack of offense when they're still bottom 5 in the league in runners in scoring position. Now we're going to complain about getting bats. You can't have it both ways. So, in my opinion, come August 1st, 4 of those guys I mentioned, Vientos, Beatty, Acuna, Mauricio, 2 of those guys need to be off this roster because it doesn't make any sense to keep all 4 of those guys on the roster. It just doesn't. It doesn't work. You're platooning these guys, so that means a hot bat might sit because of a righty-lefty matchup. It doesn't work. It hasn't worked. Beatty has been better because he's played every day. Acuna doesn't get playing time, and Vientos and Mauricio are kind of back and forth here. It doesn't help both of these guys. It really doesn't. So it's important to realize that it's not only roster manipulation that doesn't make sense with those 4 guys on the roster, because it hasn't made sense all year. From Beatty and Acuna coming up on opening day made no sense because you couldn't play both of them every day. They were platooning, then Beatty sucked, Acuna took the job, then he sucked, then Beatty came back, took the job. Then Vientos has sucked all year. It didn't work. And now you got 4 of those guys that play the same positions. Doesn't work. It's not roster manipulation doesn't make sense. I want Mendoza to have less choices and have him think when he's doing a lineup, okay, I got to play this guy today. I got to play that guy today. No, I want a bench to be bench guys. I don't need, if I want Beatty in the lineup, I don't want to be talking about Mauricio over Beatty or Acuna over Beatty that day. It doesn't work. It's stupid. Yeah, Dolo, he said that, but I don't believe that one bit. You're not in on Luis Robert and possibly in on Cedric Mullins. We know the Mets are in on Luis Robert. You're not in on Luis Robert if you're worried about Siri. So that's just to throw shade on whatever trades he's talking about. So it's going to be interesting. It really is. Because I don't trust Stearns. I still don't. Again, Gregory Soto's a nice move. It's an aggressive move. I like that. One of the top high leverage arms on the market who can be your closer if Diaz is not available. I like that a lot. And he's a lefty. So you got two lefties that Mendoza can work with. You got to do more. There are needs on this team. There's so many bullpen arms out there. I'm not worried about getting bullpen because it's going to happen. You can trip over bullpen help because there's so many guys out there. So I'm not worried about that. I like David Stearns pinpointing Gregory Soto and saying, I like him, I want him, I got him. But there's so many bullpen arms out there. I'm not worried about that. That's going to happen. That's going to materialize easily. When there's limited center field options that are better offensive possibilities than Tyrone Taylor, you get one of them. Same thing that goes for your rotation. There's two guys I trust in this rotation, and two guys are a stretch. At least one of them are. David Peterson is probably the guy I trust the most because he gives you innings and really good starts. Sean Manaea is coming back from rehab and his injury. It was nice to see him throw over 80 pitches, but we don't know if that's sustainable. We don't know if his something gets hurt again while he's stretching out his arm, while he's pitching longer in games. I don't know that. So how can I trust Sean Manaea yet? Give me 5 or 6 starts and he comes back fine. Maybe I'll be confident in him again. But when you only have David Peterson that you're confident in, because don't give me Kodai Senga, guys. Guys, you can take Senga with you. I don't want him. I don't like him. He needs more days off than anybody else. There's no guarantee of a good start with those extra days. And even with those extra days off, he doesn't give you the length that he should be giving you. If he gets 6 days off, I need him throwing 90-plus pitches, getting into the 6th inning, regardless if you pitch well or not. You got to fight through an outing and give your team length. I don't like that at all. Well, Chester, you could send them to AAA. That's fine. But they're not going to do that. Like, what's the point of having a surplus of the same prospects that play similar positions? There's too many of them. You can't leave them send them to the minors and have them just waste at bats while they're assets that could be traded for better players or the possibility of better players. I don't care if we trade these guys to the White Sox or the Marlins or the Pirates. You know what I know about those teams? They're not doing anything with them. They're going to be continuing losing teams. And at some point when they're up to their 2nd or 3rd arbitration eligible year, those teams are going to trade him again. So why do I care? They're not hurting my feelings. One, I don't think that's true. Right? Was Pete Alonso part of this farm system? Yes. Brandon Nimmo? Yes. Francisco Alvarez? Some don't even want to trade Mark Vientos. Mark Vientos was part of it. Brett Beatty was, right? So it hasn't been that bad. So we have to understand the fact that if you want to win, you got to give up something. You can't just say, well, let me get Parada in a trade because he's pointless in his farm system because of Alvarez. So let's just trade him. Well, you don't think other teams realize he hasn't been good and the Mets, he's basically expendable? Well, of course the Mets are going to throw him in deals. That doesn't mean the teams want him. Well, Joel, why do you say Vientos in a deal. Okay, so how about this? What if Vientos and another top 10 prospect? It's Vientos and another top 10 prospect. I don't know. Name one. That goes in a deal for Sandy Alcantara. Would you be okay with that? I mean, you guys got to be okay with something because Sandy Alcantara is getting traded. If he's not going to the Mets, you better hope he don't go to the Cubs. You better hope he don't go to the Dodgers. And somehow, some way, if he goes to the Phillies, that's a problem. And I'm not saying you got to get every guy that's on the market because the other team's going to get him. But I'd rather have Sandy Alcantara on my team than on another team that I have to face. One, he's not good right now. Stop that. You want Merrill Kelly, who's 36, 37 years old, who's pitched well, that's fine. But Alcantara has so much more upside. So much. And I do think getting him out of Miami, getting him in the pitching lab that has seemed to work a lot of wonders with a lot of pitchers here, I take that every day of the week. If you want Merrill Kelly for a rental, and this is the other problem, which I don't think you're hearing me, Joel. Not Joel, excuse me. Juan, you're not listening. Alcantara makes more sense for the Mets, not just this year, but for the next couple. Merrill Kelly makes sense for the next 2 months. And again, I'm all about winning right now. So I would like Merrill Kelly. I'm not against you on that. But David Stearns is not giving up prospects for rentals. Haven't you noticed this? If that's the case, we might have had a couple of guys everybody probably wanted by now. That's why Mullins is less likely than Robert. That is why Sandy Alcantara or Edward Cabrera are more likely than Gallen and Kelly. Because you're giving up assets for rentals that after this year, because the Mets aren't signing Merrill Kelly, because he's probably, as good as he's pitched, he's going to get a 2-3 year deal at the age he's at. Zach Gallen, you know damn well the Mets are not going to give 6-7 years to Zach Gallen being past at the age of 30 and moving forward. They're not doing that. He's not doing it. He already proved it this year by not signing Max Fried or Corbin Burns. But at least Alcantara, at least Edward Cabrera are going to be here this year and for a few more years. That's why he's willing to give up prospects for control along with helping the team this year. So again, if you're not going to talk about rentals, understand the situation. You might have to give a good amount, probably a decent package back to the Diamondbacks for Merrill Kelly because he's pitched well this year. And that's a rental. And if you're okay with that, and again, I will be okay with that. I'm not against you on making that type of deal. But don't complain when the year's over, when you gave up assets, whatever they might be, and I think it could be 2 top 20 prospects going back from Merrill Kelly because he's pitching well. There isn't a lot of top starting pitchers on the market. They're going to cost you. And then Merrill Kelly goes somewhere else. So now you lost assets in your farm system and you don't have Merrill Kelly after this year. And Barry, that's fine. Let's say Vientos, Santucci, Valdez. Well, to be honest, guys, I think Vientos is gone. If it is a fact that Vientos for Robert is a possibility, which I don't think it's just going to be a 1-for-1, but yeah, numbers speak, but you're not talking about numbers here. You're talking about, well, Alcantara has a 6 ERA. Yeah, I get that. But again, we're talking about numbers here. Well, if you don't care about Sandy Cy Youngs in the past, then why you care about Merrill Kelly not being a good pitcher? Or he's been a solid pitcher. And again, I'm not against you on getting Merrill Kelly. I told you, I want somebody proven. And if you're going to talk about a 6 ERA this year, then you were probably one guy that didn't want a Frankie Montas, didn't want a Griffin Cannon. Right? Shit, did you want Sean Manaea? He was throwing 4 or 5 ERAs before we got him. Yet your mouth's pretty quiet now, right? And again, I agree with you. I would take Kelly. I would take Gallen. But, and let's say Kelly and Mitch Keller, right? Two guys that have really good seasons. Now, Keller is under control. Big difference. But again, Kelly at the age he's at, even though I believe he's good, that would be a solid addition to this rotation. I'm all on board. But you got to look at it from the David Stearns perspective. He's not giving up assets for a rental unless he knows that he has a good shot of signing him. And I'm telling you this right now, with Merrill Kelly, if he has a good season, finishes up good, have a 3.4, 3.5 ERA, really good season, somebody's going to give him 2 or 3 years. The Mets aren't going to do that, especially with the rotation that they already have and with the young kids possibly coming up, at least 2 of them. Yeah, but no, Skeens is not a target because the Pirates are not trading him. Maybe next year or the year after, yes, when he goes into that arbitration eligible years, yes. But let's not talk about Paul Skeens. Don't waste your time on that. Everybody wants Paul Skeens. And I'm going to tell you this right now, the Mets won't get him if they have to trade. Because you know damn well David Stearns is not trading basically a farm full of cows in your farm system to get Paul Skeens. Because there's no guarantee you can sign him. Because you don't think Paul Skeens, he ain't signed no extension? Are you out of your mind with anybody? He's going to free agency. It's his better bet. Yeah, but it's a dumb example. To be quite honest with you, dumb example. It is. I don't want to. Paul Skeens is pointless to me until he's actually on the market in probably 2020, end of 2026, or possibly trade deadline 2026 into 27. And oh, by the way, by the time he might be available, the CBA is up, and we might have a lockout anyway, which is another thing that you have to keep in mind. Because there might not be a 2026 free agent class going into 2027 because of the CBA. Because nobody's going to make moves when the CBA is coming up. We saw it a couple of years back. What happened? There was no moves made because teams were concerned about the CBA, about, tax threshold, salary cap, blah, 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 and all that crap. Yeah, I understand that. But you were saying the same thing about Griffin Cannon. You were saying the same thing about Frankie Montas. You were probably saying this damn same thing when Mets signed Sean Manaea last year. Well, you might be dumb as fuck. And again, I am not saying that Alcantara is going to make a difference. He can still be bad. But I like the upside. And again, you want Merrill Kelly? I'd take Merrill Kelly. I would be fine with that. But again, when you're David Stearns, he's not looking at it like, oh, he's been good this year. He's a 36, 37-year-old having a good season that we know damn sure somebody's going to sign him for a 2-3 year deal because of the year he had. Stearns is not doing that. And again, Merrill Kelly might be the difference maker and help us win a World Series. And again, that's what I care about. But I'm looking at it from the perspective of what David Stearns is looking at here. I find it very hard to believe he's bringing in somebody that is worth getting and help this team that is not under team control, at least for one more year. Yeah, Joel, I don't see why wouldn't he? Sure, like I don't think the 6 ERA for Alcantara is because he's bad. I do think there's probably something going on that the Marlins probably don't know or look at or care about because he's a trade target regardless. Yeah, but how is it a broken arm? I mean, how is it a broken arm? It's a repaired arm, which 90% of baseball has. Now, I do agree with you that usually the second year after Tommy John is where they take the next bigger step. But I don't think it's just his arm. Like, the velocity is there. The movement of his pitches are there. It could be something little as mechanical. And again, are you trusting the Marlins to figure that out? Probably not. Yeah, look how Sandy has been used in the past. That's the Marlins' fault. But what does that have to do with now? You just said you don't look at the past, but you're talking about the past. So you just contradicted yourself. Don't do that. The fact of the matter is, if you don't want Alcantara, then fine. You want Merrill Kelly because he's had a better season. And again, name a pitcher that had a good season. I want him on the Mets. Why? One, because 90% of the guys that you're talking about are used and probably off an injury somewhere, some way. You don't think Zach Gallen had an injury? You don't think he's thrown a lot of innings over the last 2 seasons? Yes, he has. Merrill Kelly, you want a 37-year-old now that has a lot of miles on his arm? Great, let's get him. And again, it's fine. I'm okay with that. They played well. Okay, Juan, but I gave you examples of guys not having good seasons that came onto a new team and had really good 2 months after the trade deadline and helped them in the postseason. Right? Did you see the numbers of Jorge Soler, Adam Duvall, when the Braves got him? Weren't very appealing, but they helped them get a World Series. Jorge Soler was a World Series MVP. And again, I'm giving you examples because that happens. Tommy Edman last year with the Dodgers didn't have a good season with the Cardinals before he got traded. He looked like MVP caliber when he became a Dodger. But it's not. But Juan, okay? So Merrill Kelly is no guarantee. You're hoping that Merrill Kelly pitches as well as he has in Arizona. So hope goes both ways. It doesn't just go hope for bad players that haven't had good seasons. Hope is on the other side too when it comes for Merrill Kelly. Just because he's having a good season doesn't mean he's going to have a good. Okay, so there we go. So you're hoping Merrill Kelly performs the way he has in Arizona. I'm hoping Sandy Alcantara doesn't pitch like he did in Miami for the Mets. So same hope, different reasons. Okay, Juan, but again, the fact of the matter is Stearns isn't trading assets for rentals. Until you get that 3 at the head, the conversation can't continue because you're not understanding that David Stearns is not giving assets for rentals, especially starting pitching. It's just not happening. Okay, Barry, that's fine. That is fine. I completely understand that. But again, you're hoping for Merrill Kelly to have the same season he's having with the Mets. Okay, Juan, let's see him get lit up. But you're acting like Merrill Kelly's going to come here and be an ace. Merrill Kelly can be a complete disaster. But again, we're talking about what Stearns is going to do. Not what you're going to do, not what I'm going to do. What Stearns is going to do. Stearns has already said he doesn't like trading assets for rentals. He doesn't like that. Maybe bullpen arms he might do that for. Maybe. But not starting pitching. Not bad. That's fine, Juan. And guess what? You're not going to show up when Merrill Kelly blows up as a New York Met. You won't do it. So it's the same concept. I told you guys, call me out when I want Alcantara, which 90% of the fan base wants. You can call them all out. That's fine. I'm okay with that. Oh, so Juan Kelly is like Bassett. Do you not remember Bassett in the playoffs in the wild card round for the Mets? Oh, I guess we forgot about that, right? No, Juan, you acting like you want Kelly like you would drive him from Arizona to New York. Like, let's not act like you don't desperately. All you've been bringing up is Kelly. Like, why don't you bring up Mitch Keller? He's had just as good a season, if not better than Keller. Kelly, and he's had a couple more years of control. You haven't brought up Keller once. Why? And he's younger, by the way. No, he would be a better in your mind because you're just looking at the numbers. Again, these teams are not just looking at the numbers. Then why is Mullins available? Why are teams going for Mullins? Why are teams going for Robert? Why is that? Because of the potential. the possibility of changing sceneries and coming on a contending team. That's why they do it. That's why they do it. And again, no, numbers don't talk. I just gave you examples. You don't want to listen to examples. I can't keep on going in circles with you because you're not listening. I gave you numbers of bad players last year that weren't good over the last couple of seasons that had bad numbers. I gave you Yoenis Cespedes in 2015, who had bad numbers with the Detroit Tigers. Yet we traded our number one prospect for him. Why? Because of the potential of bringing that big bat into the Mets lineup. That's why. Tommy Edman, you look at his season last year, wasn't good for the Cardinals. MVP caliber in the playoffs for the Dodgers. Right? Look at Flaherty, Jack Flaherty. Detroit to the Dodgers. He wasn't helpful. He wasn't having good numbers for Detroit. Yet he was very good in the postseason for the Dodgers, especially in the World Series. All right, let's see. Let's see. I think closer. Okay, Mullins is a rental. All right, but that's why I just said Robert's probably more likely. You can't bring up rental and then with Robert as well. It doesn't work both ways. Well, Rock, see, that's the point, right? Juan Uribe and Kelly Johnson wasn't big names. But what did the Mets lack? The Mets lacked a big bat and bench. Juan Uribe and Kelly Johnson helped the bench, along with they started a little bit to help out and showed the team that, hey, if you don't play well, these guys are going to play. Terry Collins talked about that. Yeah, but Dakota, it's not about every stat. And that's where Juan doesn't understand. Oh, but see, here's the problem. He just said Roberts wouldn't be a bad get. Why? He's having a bad season. So you're using your contradictory opinion on a guy you don't want in Alcantara, but using the same example I'm giving about a bad stats that year going to another team and performing better, but you're okay with Robert. How does that work? Robert's going to cost. If you don't think Robert's going to cost, you're an idiot. And so what if Marlins are out of division? Who cares? Why do you care about that? Like, who cares? No, Juan, you don't get it. So, all right. So, okay, let's trade to other teams that are not in your division, even though they just gave you a Kelly Johnson, Juan Uribe trade that was in division, right? That the Braves gave the Mets. That clearly helped the Mets. But again, the Marlins, who are playing decent this year, and I'll give you that, but you can't be afraid of making deals because they're in your division. And it's the Marlins. You're not trading with the Braves or the Phillies. Joel, it depends on what team that gets him, right? We're hearing a lot of talks that the White Sox like Vientos. Well, Vientos isn't a top 10 prospect anymore. He isn't a proven guy at the major league level that you can say that he could be good, he could be not good. I don't know. I don't think Vientos is a very good defender. I don't think he has a position. So I think he's pointless for the New York Mets. I don't think he's going to hit like last year. So yeah, I do that. So if Vientos for Robert is straight up, I do that because of the fact we need a center fielder. Last time I checked, Beatty's can play third base. He's had a better season than Mark Vientos. If we're going to talk about recency bias, which Joel is Juan is talking about, I want Beatty playing third base over over Vientos because Beatty has been hitting. Right? Stats matter, according to Juan. So there you go. And again, would I make that deal? Yes. Dwayne, if Gore's on the block, then you go get him, but he's going to cost a hell of a lot more. And again, I don't think anybody's going to complain about Mackenzie Gore. I completely agree with you, but I don't the Marlins have made so many bad trades, right? Do you know not one player in the Christian Yelich deal is on the Marlins roster, and most of them are out of baseball? So you think I trust the Marlins developing any of these guys? I don't. So I'm not worried about that. Let Vientos butcher at third base. Let him bat what he's batting now for the Marlins. Go right ahead. If you're going to talk about a top prospect, great. Who cares? Well, Dwayne, I think the Marlins will trade in division. But I ask everybody, and I say this all the time, right? Regardless of what you think of Sandy Alcantara, right? There is an upside there. He could be much better than he currently is. Again, there's no proof of that. We'll see. Somebody's right. Juan's right. Yeah, Juan, they're getting a little better, but we know that's not going to last. Because as soon as these guys get better, they're going to trade them. We all know that. That's why I'm not concerned. Like, that's the problem. Yeah, the Marlins haven't traded with the Mets before for a couple of years. And again, there's so many times the Marlins were willing to trade with the Mets. I go back to a couple of years ago. Edward Cabrera was on the trade block, and the Mets almost got him. The Mets said no because of Brett Beatty. So the Marlins are willing to do it. The Mets said no. So it's not the Marlins wanting to trade with the Mets. And at the time, there was people that didn't want to trade Beatty for Edward Cabrera. Now, for all we know, that could have been a better move for us. Who knows? But that's the point. Well, we're not going to give up nothing, Juan. And you don't have to trust Sandy Alcantara. And again, I'm not trying to convince you he's going to be better than he is. But I'm trying to convince you that David Stearns is not looking at it that way. Do you know how many bad guys he got brought on his team? And they've been much better for us than they were on prior teams? Like, and Alcantara actually has history of saying he can be good. And he's not 37 years old. So that's why I think it's more likely. And I'm trying to give you the perspective of David Stearns, not my perspective. I told you, I do Kelly. I would do Merrill Kelly for a trade. I would, again, Mitch Keller. I do that. They have better seasons. I'm on board with that. But David Stearns will not do a trade for a rental, giving up assets in Merrill Kelly. I just don't see it. Like, I haven't checked the stats of Edward Cabrera. I haven't checked that. I'll be honest with you. I know Alcantara has had a rough season. I know that for a fact. Let me just check something. Hold on, guys. Give me a second. Okay, so do you want Edward Cabrera? He's had a 3.4 ERA. Would you rather have him over Alcantara? Because he's going to cost you more. Right? I'm asking everybody in the chat. Is Edward Cabrera worth getting? He has, I think, one more year extra of control over Alcantara. Obviously, a lot less money, but he's going to cost you more. If you're just going to go based on stats of this year, plus a lot of control, he's going to cost you more. So is it okay giving a lot of prospects up to the Marlins, which you don't want to do for Alcantara because they're in your division? So let's get Edward Cabrera. Is that a difference? That's the problem, right? He had 3.48 ERA. He's thrown, last 5 games, he's thrown 5 and 2/3, 4, 7, 7, and 5 and 1/3 in his last start 2 days ago. So he's had a good season, but this is his best year other than 2022 of his career, right? 3.48 ERA, had 17 starts. And oh, by the way, he's been mostly injured for his career. So that's what you want? A guy who's had multiple injuries, not just arm injuries, back injuries, shoulder injuries. Yet he's had a better season than Alcantara. So according to some people in the chat, you want Cabrera over. Okay, so you're not sold on Cabrera. But again, you're talking about Merrill Kelly, who's a complete old man who's having a good season. That's a rental, which is not happening for the Mets. Yeah, well, Mike. I mean, he's actually thrown more innings than most Mets, except for David Peterson. He's thrown. Let me just double check. I just saw it. What the hell is it? He's thrown 88 innings this year. And again, we're talking about concern about injuries. He threw 96 innings last year, 99 innings the year before, and 71 innings the year before that. And he's 27 years old. So again, okay, Juan, okay, he's been hurt in the past. But in your logic, he's better than Sandy Alcantara this year. So again, well, Juan, you don't want any more projects. Okay. Alcantara is not a project. I think it takes a full year after Tommy John to get back to their level because the velocity's there, the movement of his pitches are there. It's just control is the last thing that comes back. SNY Broadcast brings that up all the time. They talked about that with Zach Wheeler. They talked about that with Matt Harvey. They talked about it with so many pitchers. Well, Juan, I'm looking about, but again, you just said I'm using your terms here. Edward Cabrera has had a better season than Sandy Alcantara. So you should want Edward Cabrera. I'm using your logic. Or you don't care about history, right? So if you care about history, last year Alcantara was hurt. Last year Cabrera was hurt. But Alcantara was worse this year than Cabrera this year. Yeah, but Juan, same thing goes for Edward Cabrera. He's here next year. So again, I'm not talking about next year. I'm talking about David Stearns is talking about next year because he likes guys with control. He don't mind giving up assets for control. And I don't necessarily agree with him, but I'd rather get the better player right now to help us. And again, I'm on board. Merrill Kelly will be fine. I'm not going to be mad about that trade. Okay, Juan, so let's trade for Edward Cabrera, who's a 3.48 ERA, right? Like, that's the point. So I just used your logic, but you don't like it because it doesn't fit your argument. So that's the problem. Again, if you think we're getting rentals on this team that's not okay, Juan, you're not interested in Cabrera, so your argument's pointless for Alcantara. But you want Merrill Kelly, who's 37 years old. So, like, that's the idea. Wolverine, no. DeGrom's not happening. As much as most of us like DeGrom, it's not happening. And DeGrom has a no-trade clause. That's not happening, guys. UWL, only thing about Alcantara, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to click on the comments, guys, but it's not working, so I apologize. Only thing about Alcantara, his 2023 season wasn't the greatest either, but still, well, yeah, 2023, yeah, I agree with you, but, we can talk about 2024, right? It was better until he got hurt, but let's see, Barry says Merrill Kelly has a 3.74 career ERA, just likely he regrets to the mean if we get him. Yeah, sure. And like I said, I would be fine with Merrill Kelly. There's no reason why he can't help this team. He would have better ERAs than some of these guys on this roster now. But, the logic goes back to the same thing. I don't think David Stearns is trading for rentals, especially in the starting pitching market or the bat market. Maybe bullpen, we'll have a conversation about it. I think he will be willing to do that, but not a bat and not in the rotation. He don't see that as a better risk of getting a guy that could help us this year, but if he doesn't, he's gone. They're not re-signing these guys. I'm just letting you know that. They're not. Especially Merrill Kelly, who's 36, 37 years old. Just not happening. I know a lot of people are talking about Siri. Again, when Siri comes back, we'll have a conversation about him. But I don't think the Mets are not going to make a deal because Siri's possibly coming back. All right, so let's just finish up here. Let's just finish up we talked about Alcantara, we talked about Gallen, we talked about Robert. Griffin Jax, right? He's obviously another potential arm that is on the block. We'll see. Again, that would be a huge get if David Stearns can pull that off. I mean, if you get Griffin Jax, and again, losing logic here, he hasn't had a good season, really good season. He's been, good, but not great. And we'll go over the stats really quickly. Here we go. So he is 30. He has a 4 ERA. So I guess we can't get him because he has a 4 ERA. It's terrible. Again, we can't actually worry about just the stats of this year, right? Obviously, everybody's going to look at that. But, again, we can look at it right now, right? Has Gregory Soto had a really good year? Not really. Then why did the Mets get him? Because of the potential. Because they think they could probably fix things that he's been dealing with when it comes to mechanical pitches, whatever, right? Same thing goes for Griffin Jax. He has a 4 ERA, but we know he has electric stuff. Teams are going to go after him. Let's see. Do we really need another 8th inning guy? I mean, sure. Let's get him. The more the merrier. But again, they're also going to cost you more. So we'll see. And yeah, I think we can all agree that if Stearns gets Charlie Morton, it's going to excite the fan base, right, guys? I know Charlie Morton's, 73 years old, but he's been good in the playoffs. If anybody cares about that, history-wise, right? But again, guys, we can go all over the league and the players that are available. Some like, some don't like, and that's okay. That's everybody's opinion, right? We don't have to agree. But even the guys that we don't agree with getting, there's a pretty good chance they might end up on that team or our team. Like, would anybody be shocked by the end of the deadline, Cedric Mullins or Luis Robert is a Met? Right? Some are going to like it, some are not. And some are going to bring up stats of this year. And that's fine. I have no problem you doing that. But teams don't look at it that way. Again, so many times guys have had not good stats on their team and are on the trade block, go to the next team and play extremely well, or at least really good, or better than they had. Not saying that it's a guarantee, but there's a possibility. Blockbuster trade coming? What do you think, guys? Not just with the Mets, right? I still think there's going to be a big trade, even though I still don't trust Stearns. But I feel like because of the aggressiveness of Stearns with Gregory Soto, which came out of left field, nobody, this is the other thing, guys. All the reports we heard, there was not one report about Gregory Soto going to the Mets. Now, there's some fans, including myself, Chris, Zach, we brought up Gregory Soto as a potential option. But it wasn't reported that the Mets were in on it. And Stearns was talking about that trade, working on that trade for 2 weeks, and a reporter couldn't get their hands on that. So what we might hear might not be factual. Obviously, you guys know that. You guys are not dumb. But it will be very interesting to see. Well, year one, of course, there's about 47 arms that were potential options for the Mets. You know what I'm saying? But Gregory Soto wasn't on any radar of a reporter that was trying to find what was going on. We've heard Clase, we've heard Bednar, we heard multiple guys. We've heard Colomé from the Twins. We heard about Jax. We heard about Duran, right? We heard about those guys being linked. Gregory Soto wasn't technically linked from any reports. Now, he was an option because, well, he was available, and there's like 50 guys from the bullpen that are available. So, yeah, the Mets are going to be an option if you're available for the bullpen. So it's going to be very interesting, guys. We've got 5 days. Obviously, today is part of the 5 days until the MLB trade deadline at 6 p.m. on Thursday. A lot of moving parts. Again, check out my video that I posted at 12 o'clock about the Marlins and Mets possibility. We talked about it for over almost an hour now. Alcantara, Edward Cabrera, which one is it? They're talking about one of those guys. I don't think it's anybody else on their roster. I think it's one of those guys. I think you all can agree it's probably one of those guys. But I go into a little bit more depth about, where I got the reports from, or Ernest Dove, Danny Wexler, all those guys. Their tweets were basically 10 minutes apart in response to possible roster manipulation movement from guys like Jack Wenninger, who is in a lot of talks from other teams about wanting him, who's in AA with the Mets right now, and guys from low A and high A getting promoted soon means that there might be a roster spot available or two in that AA roster. And that's why people are speculating guys that could be on the block in the Mets minor league farm system in trade talk. So a lot to talk about, guys, but this is episode 3. There'll be another video at 3 o'clock in regards to another possible trade deal that has been picking up steam over the last couple of days. Check that out. Again, check out the Marlins-Mets trade with possible trade with Alcantara and or Cabrera. That is already up. With that said, guys, I'll be doing a pregame later today at 5:45, and then postgame after the Mets finish up the Giants, and hopefully we're talking about a sweep for a postgame. So a lot of videos, a lot of live streams, a lot of my face today. Thank you for tuning in to the Mets Trade Deadline Show, episode 3 on the channel and on X. I'll see you later today for Mets pregame. Check out the 2 videos that will be popping up, or one's up, the other one's coming up at 3 o'clock, guys. Have a good day, guys. Let's go Mets, and let's see what Stearns got cooking over the next couple of days of the deadline, guys. Have a good day.
Rob on the mic, spitting truth from the heights. Queens unite under stadium lights. Bright nights, 7 train rides. Dreams born in the real hum. Brooklyn to Queens. Yeah, we all about that outcome. It's our time.